The evening air in Boston's historic Beacon Hill was thick with the scent of aged oak and the heavy, unset expectations of the city's most established dynasty. The Harrison Mansion, a sprawling monument to centuries of banking dominance and social exclusivity, stood as a fortress against the changing world outside. Within its walls, the air was cold, not from a lack of heating, but from the calculated chill of a family that viewed warmth as a weakness. This evening was the 70th birthday of Sarah Harrison, the matriarch whose very nod could determine a person's social survival in the upper echelons of New England society. It was not merely a celebration. It was a curated display of power, a gathering where every guest was a pawn and every conversation was a strategic move in a game that had been played for 5 generations. Olivia stood near the massive, hand-carved fireplace, her fingers tracing the smooth surface of a silver bracelet. It was a simple piece, adorned with a single cerulean stone that caught the light of the crystal chandeliers. To anyone else in the room, it was a trinket, a piece of costume jewelry that had no place among the multi-carat diamonds and heirloom emeralds surrounding her. To Olivia, however, it was a piece of her soul. It was the first gift James had ever given her, purchased long before his name was synonymous with tech innovation. Back when they were just 2 people talking about life in a small-town diner, she knew she was being watched. The whispers were like a low-frequency hum, vibrating through the floorboards. The Harrison family and their inner circle had spent the last 3 years treating Olivia like an unfortunate clerical error in the family lineage. She was the waitress James had picked up during a lapse in judgment. She was the girl from the middle-of-nowhere Pennsylvania who had somehow managed to ensnare the golden heir of the Harrison fortune, Elizabeth. A woman whose face had been pulled tight by decades of expensive procedures and whose loyalty to Sarah was absolute, stood a few feet away, her voice carrying just enough to be heard. "It's been 3 years and she still dresses like she's going to a church social in a coal town," she murmured to a companion. "Sarah told me she actually tried to convince James to divert the family's summer estate renovation budget toward public literacy programs. Can you imagine the audacity? Trying to dismantle a century of tradition with her common-sense charity? Claire, James's cousin, and a woman who had spent her entire life grooming herself to be the face of the Harrison social machine, approached Olivia with a smile that never reached her eyes. Her gown was a masterpiece of French silk, costing more than most families earned in a year. "Olivia, darling," Claire began, her voice a sharp contrast to the soft classical music playing in the background. "I see you've opted for the minimal look again. It's so brave of you. Especially tonight. Mother specifically noted on the invitations that this was a black tie formal affair. Perhaps you didn't see that part of the card? Or perhaps they don't have those terms back in Greenwood." Olivia met Claire's gaze with a steady, calm expression. She didn't flinch and she didn't apologize. "I read the invitation, Claire. I simply believe that the person inside the clothes matters more than the label on the back. This dress is comfortable, it's modest, and it's what I felt best in to celebrate Sarah's milestone." Claire's eyes narrowed, the mask of politeness slipping for a fraction of a second. The resentment she felt was palpable. Before James met Olivia, Claire had been the primary influencer in the family, the one who directed the social calendar and the charitable galas. Olivia's presence had disrupted that hierarchy. James's refusal to marry the right woman, specifically someone like Caroline Westfield, whose family tree was practically a map of the Mayflower's passenger list, was seen as a personal insult to the family's legacy. "Standards are what separate us from the rest of the world." "Olivia," Claire whispered, leaning in close enough for Olivia to smell her expensive perfume. "You might have the ring, and you might have the name, but you will never truly be a Harrison. You're just a guest who has overstayed her welcome." As Olivia moved through the room, the social isolation was nearly physical. It was like walking through a theater where everyone else knew the script. She was the only one speaking a different language. A waiter passed by with a tray of appetizers, and as Olivia reached for one, Claire's voice rang out again, louder this time, drawing the attention of the surrounding guests. "Oh, careful now. Olivia has such a healthy appetite for things that aren't hers. First our cousin's heart, and now the premium caviar." A ripple of cruel laughter moved through the small circle. These were people who had inherited everything and earned nothing. Yet they felt perfectly entitled to judge a woman who had spent her life working. The appetizers are wonderful. Claire, Olivia said, her voice remaining level. Sarah has always had an eye for quality. It's a shame that the same eye doesn't always extend to how she treats people. The room went silent. The hired help comments were one thing, but Olivia's directness was a breach of the unspoken rule. You never, ever talk back to the family. Uncle Richard, a man whose kindness was often buried under the weight of family loyalty, stepped in to break the tension. He adjusted his silk tie and offered a small, awkward smile. Now, let's not have any drama before the main toast. It's Sarah's big day. Olivia, it's good to see you. Do you know when James is expected? The board was hoping to catch a word with him. He had a final meeting regarding the new foundation initiative, Olivia explained, grateful for Richard's intervention. He should be here any moment. Another meeting? A new voice cut through the air. Sarah Harrison approached, her designer gown rustling with every authoritative step. Her presence was like a cold front moving into a valley. She didn't look at Olivia's face. She looked at her dress, her eyes tracing the simple lines with a look of profound disappointment. I suppose we should be thankful you arrived at all, Olivia. Though I must say, showing up to a 70th birthday celebration in what looks like an office dress is a bit of a slight, don't you think? I apologize if my attire offends you, Sarah, Olivia said, but I chose this dress for a very specific reason. I thought that on your birthday you might appreciate seeing something that represents growth and independence. What I would appreciate, Sarah snapped. Her voice, carrying across the silent hall, is a daughter-in-law who understands her place. You haven't brought anything to this family but division. You've turned my son against his own heritage. Tell me, what do you actually contribute to this marriage? Besides, of course, the drain on the Harrison resources for your little projects. The air in the room felt thin. The guests, some of the most powerful people in the city, watched with the morbid curiosity of spectators at a Roman arena. Olivia felt the sting of the words, but she didn't lower her head. I love James, Olivia said, her voice resonating with a quiet power. And he loves me. We have a partnership built on mutual respect. I don't see how that is a drain on anything. Sarah let out a short, mocking laugh. Respect? Dear, respect is earned through lineage and contribution. You spend our money on homeless shelters and public schools while wearing rags. You play at being a philanthropist with a checkbook you didn't earn. You're a passenger in this family, Olivia. Nothing more. Remember last Christmas? A younger cousin piped up, eager to win points with Sarah. She wanted us to cancel the family gift exchange and send the money to a soup kitchen in Pittsburgh. As if the Harrisons haven't done enough for the lower classes already. It wasn't about the money, Olivia tried to explain, her heart beginning to pound in her chest. It was about the gesture. About recognizing that we have so much while others we have so much because we are who we are. Claire shouted, stepping toward Olivia. You don't belong here. You never did. You're just a lucky girl who was in the right place when a billionaire's car broke down. You're a waitress with a fancy last name, and it's time you stop pretending you're one of us. The humiliation was complete. The silence that followed was heavy, a suffocating blanket of judgment. Olivia stood in the center of the room, surrounded by people who viewed her as an intruder, a thief of status. She looked around at the portraits of Harrison ancestors on the walls. Men and women who had built empires on the backs of others, and she felt a wave of profound sadness. Not for herself, but for them. Maybe you're right, Olivia said, her voice so soft it forced the room to lean in. I don't belong in a world where worth is measured by the price of a dress or the history of a bloodline. I don't belong in a room where people think they are better than others simply because they were born into the right zip code. Then perhaps, Sarah said, her voice like a guillotine blade, you should wait for my son in the car. This celebration would be much more harmonious without the constant reminder of his mistake. The dismissal was total. It was a public execution of her social standing. Olivia felt the hot prickle of tears, but she refused to let them fall. She began to turn, her dignity the only thing she had left in that room. When the massive oak doors at the end of the hall swung open, James Harrison stood there. He wasn't the polished, smiling CEO the public saw on television. His suit was slightly rumpled, his tie was loosened, and his eyes were fixed on his wife. He had heard everything. The acoustics of the old mansion were perfect, and the silence of the guests had ensured that his mother's final insult had reached his ears clearly. "Shh, James." Sarah's voice changed instantly. The ice melted into a sickeningly sweet warmth. "There you are, darling. We were just having a small discussion about expectations. Perhaps you can help Olivia understand why tonight is so important."
Oh?
James didn't look at his mother. He walked straight through the crowd, which parted for him like the Red Sea. He stopped in front of Olivia and took her hand. He didn't just hold it. He interlocked his fingers with hers in a gesture of absolute solidarity. "I heard the discussion, Mother," James said. His voice was quiet, but it had a vibration of steel that made the people in the front row step back. "I heard every word." The room held its breath. They expected a defense of his wife, a passionate argument about love. What they didn't expect was the cold, clinical look in James's eyes. He looked at his family not with anger, but with a strange kind of pity. "You all talk about the Harrison legacy," James began, his gaze sweeping across the room and landing on Claire. "You talk about contribution and worth. You talk about Olivia as if she is a charity case I picked up on the side of the road in Greenwood." He looked back at his mother. "I think it's time we clarify a few things. Things that Olivia asked me to keep private because she wanted you to like her for who she is, not for what she has. But since you've proven that you are incapable of the former, let's talk about the latter." Sarah's hand moved to her throat, her fingers clutching her pearls. "James, really? This isn't the time." "It is exactly the time," James interrupted. "When my car broke down in Greenwood 3 years ago, I wasn't the billionaire you see today. I was the CEO of a company that was 3 weeks away from a total liquidity collapse. I was drowning in debt, and the Harrison legacy was about to become a cautionary tale in the Wall Street Journal." A murmur of shock rippled through the room. The Harrisons failing? It was unthinkable. That little coffee shop Olivia owned. James continued, his voice rising in intensity. "She didn't just serve lattes. She owned a chain of 4 successful businesses she built from nothing while she was still in her 20s. She had an economics degree she actually used, unlike half the people in this room. And when she saw the state of my books, she didn't walk away. She spent 3 nights straight rebuilding my entire investment strategy." He squeezed Olivia's hand. "The Westbrook acquisition? The one that saved this family and tripled our net worth? That wasn't my idea. It was Olivia's. She identified the market gap while your brilliant board members were busy picking out the color of their next yachts." Claire's face had gone pale. "But she never says anything in the meetings. She just sits there." "She tried to speak," James snapped, his voice finally cracking with the fury he had been suppressing. "She tried to give her input 3 different times in the last year, and every single time, you talked over her. You dismissed her because she wasn't wearing the right designer, or because she didn't go to the right finishing school. You silenced the most brilliant mind in this family because of your own pathetic insecurity." He turned to his mother. "And as for the drain on Harrison resources, Mother, the $30 million donation for the new hospital wing that's being announced tomorrow, that didn't come from the family trust. That check was written from Olivia's personal account." The silence in the room was now absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the thick Persian rugs. Sarah looked like she had been struck. Her personal account. Olivia sold her original business holdings last year for an 8-figure sum, James revealed, his eyes blazing with pride. She has been managing her own portfolio since she was 22. She has more liquid capital than most of the people in this room combined. She doesn't wear rags because she can't afford better. She wears this dress because it was made by a women's cooperative she founded, a place that gives domestic abuse survivors a way to earn a living with dignity. Olivia finally spoke, her voice calm and steady. "I didn't want you to know about the money because I wanted to know if I could be part of a family that valued people for their character. I wanted to see if the Harrison name stood for something more than just a balance sheet. I wanted to belong because of a human connection, not a financial transaction." She looked at Sarah, whose legendary composure had completely evaporated. "You asked me what I bring to this marriage, Sarah. I brought my heart, my mind, and my loyalty. I brought a perspective that sees people as human beings, not as social assets. I'm sorry that wasn't enough for you. James looked at the crowd, his jaw tight. The next time you decide to judge someone based on their appearance, remember this night. Remember that the woman you tried to kick out of this room is the only reason you still have a roof over your heads. You've spent generations building walls of exclusivity, but you forgot to build a foundation of actual substance. He turned back to his mother. Happy birthday, Mother. Your gift is in the car. It's the original Monet you've been trying to buy for 20 years. The one that the owners refused to sell to you because of your reputation? Olivia negotiated for it personally. She spent months convincing them that it would be cared for. The revelation was the final blow. Sarah sank into a nearby chair, her legs no longer able to support her. The guests looked away, unable to meet Olivia's eyes. The cousins who had been smirking earlier were now staring at their shoes, their faces flushed with shame. Aunt Margaret, who had spent the evening ignoring Olivia, was now staring at her with a mix of terror and newfound respect. The atmosphere in the mansion had shifted. The walls of the fortress hadn't fallen, but the people inside had been exposed. The rigid formality of the evening had been replaced by a heavy, uncomfortable air of self-reflection. For the first time in their lives, the Harrisons were forced to look at themselves through the eyes of someone they couldn't intimidate or buy. "We're leaving now," James said, his voice quiet but final. "I think you all have a lot to think about." As they walked toward the door, the silence followed them. But just as they reached the threshold, Sarah stood up. She walked toward them, her movements slow and humble. The sharp, predatory look in her eyes was gone, replaced by something that looked remarkably like regret. "Olivia," Sarah said, her voice trembling, I have been a foolish woman. I have spent 70 years learning how to judge, and I never learned how to see. I was wrong. Completely and utterly wrong."
Oh.
Olivia looked at her mother-in-law. She saw the cracks in the porcelain mask, the vulnerability of a woman who realized her entire worldview was flawed. "It's never too late to learn, Sarah," Olivia said gently. Claire stepped forward too, her earlier bravado replaced by a genuine sense of awkwardness. "The women's cooperative, the one that made your dress. I'd like to hear more about it. If you'll let me?" The change wasn't instant, and it wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. The family gathering that had started as a ritual of exclusion had ended as a lesson in humanity. Outside, Boston night was cool and crisp. As James helped Olivia into the car, the city lights sparkled like diamonds in the distance. "Are you okay?" James asked, his voice full of concern as he looked at his wife. "I am," Olivia replied, a small, tired smile playing on her lips. "I think for the first time in 3 years, I can actually breathe in that house." "You were amazing," James said, leaning over to kiss her forehead. "I'm sorry it came to that. I'm sorry they were so cruel." "It's okay," she said, looking back at the glowing windows of the mansion. "Sometimes people need to see the truth in a way that they can't ignore. Real change doesn't happen when you yell. It happens when you stand your ground and let the truth speak for itself. They didn't see me before. Now, they have no choice." They drove away from the estate, leaving behind the weight of 5 generations. The legacy they were building wasn't made of stone and bank accounts, but of integrity, hard work, and a love that refused to be intimidated by the shadows of the past. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that true value lies beneath the surface, please consider subscribing to our channel. We believe in celebrating the strength of real partnerships and the power of character over status. In a world that often focuses on the superficial, we are dedicated to bringing you stories of couples who stand together, who honor one another, and who prove that loyalty is the greatest wealth of all. We would love to hear your thoughts on Olivia and James's journey. Do you believe that everyone deserves a second chance to change their perspective? Or was the Harrison family's behavior unforgivable? And we're curious to know where you're joining us from. Whether you're watching from the quiet suburbs of Ohio, the sunny beaches of California, or the bustling streets of Chicago, leave a comment below and let us know your location. We are building a community of people who value respect and fidelity in marriage. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss our weekly stories. Next week, we have a beautiful tale of a man who discovers his wife's secret past knot, a past of shame, but one of incredible sacrifice and hidden heroism. It's a story that will make you hug your loved ones a little tighter. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that they are worthy, regardless of what the world says. Until next time, remember that the most beautiful things in life aren't things at all, they are the people who stand by us. When the world tries to pull us down,